Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest and I have a fair bit in common. Both podcasters, both have a newsletter, both founders, both handsome, intelligent, two-way defensemen. The notable differences are that his 700 plus games came in the NHL, and now he has a blossoming career on NHL Network. Jason Demers, thank you so much for taking the time to join the show here today.
What an intro. Probably one of the better intros I've gotten, so I appreciate it, buddy. It's excited to be here.
Absolutely. No, excited to dive into your career, your transition, and as I mentioned, doing analyst work for NHL Network now. So kind of start there a little bit, Jason. Is the broadcasting analyst commentary side of the game something that you always wanted to get into? Where did that kind of interest come from after you wrapped up your playing days?
Man, it's really, now that I look back, it probably seems, if people look from afar, they're like, oh, it's something I always wanted to do. It really wasn't. I feel like I was looking to maybe keep playing, but also, I was unsure of what my path was going to be when I retired. I didn't plan for it. It happened rather abruptly for me. I was coming on my last year of a 1 year deal. I did not go good that season. I ended up having back surgery the year I was trying to make trying to get a PTO. So that derailed me for about half the year. It ended up leading me to play in the Olympics. I played in Russia, and then I was trying to take one more kick at the can, to get one game. And in that season, would I like to continue to play after that year? Probably. And I sometimes now think back and be like, okay, maybe I should have stayed for a couple extra years. But I had a lot of concussions, and I wanted to, take care of me and my family, and make sure that I was healthy for longevity in my life. And, I was kind of sitting around, not thinking about what to do. And my wife and family and we're kind of all being like, why don't you take a shot at TV and media? And around that time, I got a message from Devin Fox, who works at NBC in the Bay Area, and she's somebody I owe a lot to in this field because she told me to apply to NHL Network. I applied, and I actually waited for a couple weeks to no avail. I didn't hear anything from anybody, and she called me and was like, "Have they reached out to you?" And it's funny because to take a quick story long, I played a lot on the West Coast, and most people didn't really know, didn't really know my career, and you could see the numbers, but they didn't really, people on the East Coast, that say they watched me are lying through their teeth most of the time because I was in San Jose. It was too late, and I know being a broadcaster on the East Coast now that how difficult it is to watch those late games. It's hard, so you really get locked into the division and your team. So a lot of people in the broadcasting world didn't know me, didn't know my personality. So it was tough to get in initially, and I had to get an interview. And Devin had to like push the NHL Network to be like, give him a shot, give him a chance. So Josh Bernstein ended up bringing me in and with Mark Haifa and gave me an interview, and I went in for one segment and they ended up keeping me for like the whole show. And through that, we've now been 3 years down the line, and I really enjoy it. I do some stuff for the Sharks. I started doing some stuff on YouTube. It's been interesting to dive into the content world, and it's really it's been fun because it's been really releasing a lot of ego as a professional athlete, and realizing that you have to you're almost more in the spotlight than when you're playing because you make a mistake, you make a turnover. It's something that will sit with you, but most people forget about it, and over time, and if you make the wrong take or you say the wrong thing or you offend the wrong person in this industry, it's especially in the media side, it's tougher. It might be tougher or just as tough to overcome because it really does live forever. A turnover lives forever, but I feel more people get eyes on something if you make a bad take. So again, it's been an interesting transition for me. And like I said, I went really long winded there, but trying to give the whole backstory of it. And I've enjoyed it though. It's been fun to kind of, unleash the personality a bit.
That's awesome. I appreciate the detail, and I think it's definitely cool to see kind of the foray you've had into the content and YouTube side of things as well. I want to get into that a little bit, but you mentioned Devin and obviously the help that she played in landing the role there. Who else was kind of a key piece in helping shape your learnings and lessons as you started out with analyst work there, and who were some people that you got to lean on and kind of learn the ropes from there?
Well, I've had a lot, and I kind of approached this the same way I approached my playing career, which was being a sponge. And when people asked me to define my game, I'd always say I was very adaptable. I could kind of conform to any system, and I can conform to any D partner I played with. And I was more of a complementary player. So when I went into the broadcasting world, I was like, I just want to be a sponge and learn and really say yes to everything. And there's so many people that helped me. From Mike Grupp on the hockey side, Kevin Weeks, EJ Raddick has been great. Catherine Tappan and LG Red and Brian Boyle, Corey Schneider. Like, there's so many names that you run through. Adnan Verk, who I've done a podcast with, has been really good, just to understanding how the preparedness. But somebody for me that I spent a lot of time with personally, covering the Olympics and also doing various things together is Jameson Coyle. Jameson Coyle has really helped me, I think, more than anybody in terms of just the way to operate as a worker, as well as teaching me about a lot of things in terms of how to interview properly. I really struggled early with interviews, and as an athlete and somebody who played the game, the biggest difficulty for guys that played is asking a question you already know the answer and eliciting a response from a player. You know the answer, but you still have to ask the question in a way that gets the best possible answer. And a lot of guys that played don't know quite how to frame it, and you kind of get caught being like, well, I'm going to sound stupid if I ask this guy, what does a good breakout mean to you? Or, how do you perform a good breakout? I know the answer, but the viewer might know. So, Jameson Coyle really helped me in that term, in those things. And he's always very good to lean on when I get to talk with him privately. He's become a good friend. And he also gave me the great tidbit of the shorter the question, the longer the answer, which has just been amazing for me to kind of wrap my head around. So, so many names that I worked with were amazing. Brody Brazil in San Jose as well was fantastic in terms of creating my own content and understanding like how to get my voice out there and how to really project was something that really was helpful. And then, if I look to San Jose, Dan Ruzanowski, Randy Hahn, and Drew Remenda have also been incredible for me. And, so good, so supportive. And it's really fun in this industry. I feel like people are very supportive and very helpful all around. I could name a million people that work behind the scenes, and Steve Tronzano and those guys that gave me an opportunity, Josh Bernstein. But, the guys that work in the game, and girls and women, they're so forthcoming with, and they want everybody to succeed. And it's it's been a very welcoming, fun family to be a part of.
That's awesome to hear how many people kind of play a role in the journey and involved there. Again, I think the content piece is really interesting, and I think both with the content, the recent YouTube slide-itis video, or even just your on ice interviews after the Cup or the work you did at the Olympics. I think you've found a really good balance of keeping it fun and lighthearted, and like you said, bringing out a different story or personality out of the guys instead of what's working on the power play. How do you kind of find that line and know those moments of, maybe when to have a little bit of fun or get creative with a question versus, like you said, ask that question that the viewer at home might need to know or want to hear when the power play is 0 for 5?
Yeah, you really do have to balance of not talking at the viewer, but just having a conversation like you're sitting at a bar. I think that really translates the best for fans. And fans don't need to be babied and coddled, but they also want you to explain something. Some people don't know all the terminology that we know, being around the game of cheddar and middle pop and bumper and all those things you talk about on a power play flank. People might not know that, and you have to almost take it. It's funny, you take it the way I played, is that there's always somebody that's probably hasn't seen you play, and you want to paint them the best picture of what you bring and who you are when they watch you in that game or they listen to you on air. So, also blending the fun for me is, I can't remember his name and I wish I did. And I feel bad because he's been a legend in the broadcasting community, but it was early in my career. And, the NHL Network and NHL always has a call. We'll probably have a call in a month or so where, Gary Bettman comes on. They talk about things going on in the league, what the changes they're making, things we should know and know ahead of time. And they'll bring on some producers that talk about, advice and the greatest piece of advice. And maybe I got lucky coming in. And maybe if you think of like a Paul Bissonnette who kind of trailblazed the way for a lot of us, was the fact that he just said, listen, people aren't looking as much anymore for the polish, no mistakes. You speak completely, you speak perfectly. Everything is very succinct. You have a tempo, you have a cadence, you have a rhythm. People understand that you played. People understand, they want your knowledge, they want authenticity, they want you to talk to them and tell them what you know in a time in a timely manner, but they also want you to be real with them. They don't need to be pandered to. These people are intelligent. Majority of hockey fans, will say majority, are very intelligent. There are some ones that aren't, but it is what it is. It's like that in any industry, but they're still passionate, and that's the important thing. So you have to be authentic to yourself. So, I almost, maybe to my detriment, have stayed away from a lot of the different broadcasting school things, and I just more relied on the people that are working in the industry to kind of pick their brain when I'm in the moment, when I'm in front of them, and it's like it's very authentic with me, between me and them, and I take what works for me, and the rest I kind of, because I don't want to be fake, and I want to be myself, and I want to be goofy and fun, and also maybe even a little bit, you know, you I use the term like, I'm being like I'm acting, and maybe it's a performance, because I think it still is. You're giving information, but it's still very performative, and I want to be that, but showing people that that is me in real life. But it's also, at the end of the day, people tune into sports to escape, and that's what we do in life. It's what it's always been since the Roman times with gladiators to now. It's the way we escape. It's the way we detach from maybe you call it real life, because it's not real life really to watch guys skate around on blades and skates and hit each other and fight, but that's what people pay their hard-earned money for. So you want to entertain them, and I kind of did that when I played and tried to, and I try to do that when I broadcast.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's an entertainment business at the end of the day. As much as we love hockey and the X's and O's, and we can nerd out over that stuff, it is an entertainment business at the end of the day. And I think that hammers home that point. When you talk about players, Jason, and I'm sure you've been on the player end of it, where you're getting ripped by somebody, and you're like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about, or who is this guy to talk about ABC, about my power play minutes or penalty kill minutes? How do you walk that line of, hey, so and so messed up and that led to this chance, versus, I'm a player, I've been there, I don't want to put this guy on blast? Is that ever a conscious thought for you, or do you look at it as kind of got to break down the play that happened and talk about what led to XYZ?
Well, we were at the finals, and you know, it was actually, we having a couple drinks after a game, and me and Corey Schneider were talking to Ray Ferraro, and he said something really great where he goes that, the hardest thing to do when you broadcast, and as an ex-player, is once you're standing up top, how easy the game actually is from up top versus on the ice. And you almost forget when you haven't played in a while, and you go, oh, that you should have made that play, you should have done that, done this. Oh, what a bad player. He's awful. But realizing that it is a very difficult game, and you have to communicate that to fans, that it is a tough game, but you also can't shy away from, listen, that was a mistake. It was a bad turnover. I made a million of them in my career. My last NHL hockey game, we won 6-1 with the Edmonton Oilers, and I was -1, and I made an egregious turnover to start. It was my 700th game. I had not played in the NHL in a year. I was super nervous. People don't know the whole backstory that led, that I was crying, basically on my first shift, and that turnover made me be like, okay, wake up. You're in an NHL hockey game, Jason. But all that to say that, like, there's so many layers to a turnover. There's so many layers to mistake. Sometimes it is black and white and it's just a bad, dumb mistake, but there's so many different things that are going on. But here's the thing. I don't pretend to know everybody's personal backstory. I don't pretend to know that the coach might be pulling the guy inside the room, and he's all over him in practice and in a game. and the guy can't just focus, and that's why he's playing bad, and he can't handle that pressure. I don't know if a guy's injured and he's got a broken finger. I sometimes do, and when I do, that might make me pull back a little bit. But again, I call it as much black and white as I can, and I try to be as honest as possible with the fans because fans aren't stupid. They see a turnover, it's a turnover. Why did that happen? I like to peel back the layers a little bit and say, okay, why did that turnover happen? Well, there was 10 seconds before that turnover that was created by that individual where the team kind of let him down. So, cleaning that up will help it. And then again, it happens. Sometimes it's best. When I played, I took things very hard. I would sit with the turnover for weeks, and it would almost affect my personal life. Bad games would really early on in my career, it was tough to get around them. But what helped me is making light of it, that it's just a game. It's really just a game, and there are millions of dollars at stake, and it's a business, and guys are, it's livelihoods. But again, it's a game. It's a kid's game. This isn't real life that, athletes should be making millions of dollars. We are, because it's the entertainment industry, and it's become and grown into this huge business, and it's very lucrative, which is great. But when you really peel it back, it's a hockey game. That's it. It's a hockey game. People need to understand that, and you try to convey that, and players do. So, and if a guy gets mad at me and doesn't like what I said, it's nothing personal. I'd probably sit and have a great time with you at the bar, and I'd have a great time. You're probably an amazing family man and a great person and a great human being, all those things. But at the end of the day, you got to call it the way you see it. And feelings aside, it's never personal with me. It never, even there's guys that I'd never tell in the league that I cannot stand, but I will always give them a fair shake, um, regardless of what I know about them, what I see about them. And I think that kind of goes back to what I said of being authentic. It's fans will see right through that if you're pulling punches. I'm a player's first guy. I want to see guys get paid. I'm hypercritical on GMs. I'm hypercritical on coaches because I do think that coaches play an enormous role in the way players play day to day. But a lot of it, at the end of the day, you're making a lot of money as a player. It is a responsibility. You have to own those things. And if it really affects you that bad, delete your social media, turn off everything, and just live your life, because at the end of the day, it's just words, it's sticks and stones. It doesn't mean anything. You got to know who you are as a player and as a person, and those things shouldn't affect you. And I know it's hard not to, because you feel like you're being personally attacked. But like I said, I don't pretend to know the inner workings of guys, and know what they're dealing with. I've been there as a player and understand that if you're in the doghouse, you're in the doghouse, and but I know also that a lot of it falls on you, and when you make a mistake, but sometimes the fans don't know, and I just try to provide more context for that.
Yeah, I think that's great perspective to hear from, again, somebody who's been in the game and seen both sides of it for so long now. I want to pick up on one thing there you mentioned around coaching. What makes a good, successful coach in today's game, Jason? I'm sure it's much different than even when you were coming up and in junior. The game has shifted, the mentality, the player's approach has shifted. What makes a good coach today?
Well, you got to be part psychologist, right? You got to understand that each player is their own individual. You have to, and I think it goes even higher in terms of a GM and scouting. Like, GMs and scouts need to understand what's the blend of personalities. I think more so now than ever. I think back then, when I started, there a lot of policing was done in the locker room, and the culture was fairly firm of like, you come in and you're conforming to this group, and you follow the alpha dog, and that's what it is. Now it seems a little bit more blended, and you don't see that as much. And maybe that's just a new generation of kid, and that's, the iPhone generation, and it is what it is. And there's more things tailored towards social media, and kids are different, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a different school, but coaches need to understand, especially head coaches, that every personality deserves a different sort of attention. It can't be. It used to just be a boot in the ass, and I think now some guys still operate that way, but I think other guys need white gloves. Other guys need to be handled very, tenderly, so to speak. And like I said, it's not an attack on guys. I just think some guys, it's different. Guys can't handle the yelling and the berating, and not to say that was right back when I played, but I was berated my whole career. Um, Not berated, when I was younger, coaches were hard on me, and players, the veterans were hard on me because, I was this. I was a little all over the place. I was a golden retriever, dog chasing cars, and I always had to laugh and be upbeat, and sometimes I had to be told to toe the line, and I don't consider that berating now. It was, people were very hard on me, and then once coaches find out that's the way to operate with you, that's the way they, because again, anytime you change teams, the closest reference to how you are as a player and a person is the last coach that had you. And if you had a coach that didn't like you and you go into a different, or didn't understand you, and you go to a different team, that coach is calling your old coach, and then it becomes a game of broken telephone. So, for me, like I said, it's managing multiple personalities. It's understanding that, some guys learn differently, understand differently, and it's just finding a way to communicate and get through to each individual. And really, that's that is what makes those great coaches great, the Paul Maurices, and I really think you can put great coaches on one hand, just like great GMs. I think there's a lot of coaches in the league, and not to say they're bad coaches, but I just think it's very tough to be a good coach in today's NHL. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult process because I think now more than ever players have more power than they've ever had. And I think especially young guys have more power than they've ever had. I didn't have a pot to piss in when I started, and I had to just take what I got and be happy with it. And it would be a fun kind of game. They do the redraft, you know, guys like you and different podcasts will do a redraft. I'd like to see like a recontract of guys that played maybe 15 years ago, young guys that, what they would make now if they were making, I was on 1 year deals till I was 26. And still, listen, I had a great career and was paid handsomely, but it's just funny to think sometimes certain guys that had 30, 40 goals that got a 1 year deal back in the day, that now if you get that, or you get, less than a point a game, you're the highest paid player in the NHL. Not to say Lou Carlson's not a fantastic player, but it's a crazy number, and it's where we're at. There's never been more power. So coaches need to understand that. And it's difficult. So I do believe that. And, lastly on that is I think a head coach is it's the sum of its parts. And I really think you need great assistants alongside of you. And I think you need a lot of good ex players that played and can communicate with guys. You see the top teams now that have some really good ex players that are assistant coaches. But like some of my favorite coaches were my assistants. Scotty Allen, Trent Yanni, guys like that just were amazing to me. Jake Woodcroft was great to me too as an assistant, and those people just helped me a lot. So it's having, and if I didn't have those assistants, I would have been in a way worse shape because me and the coach, we're at odds a little bit. So it's always like I think it's managing personalities and being the sum of your parts, which is the assistants.
Yeah, and I think managing personalities, like you said, sometimes it's a boot in the ass, sometimes it's a slipper in the ass. Both are fair. You got to know when to put which one on, right? And you mentioned again, kind of the personalities in the room there. And early in your career, you played with a lot of larger than life figures, whether it be Jumbo Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, Dan Boyle, Rob Blake, all those guys. What are some of those lessons and teachings that you picked up being around guys of again that stature, and carried with you to your career outside of the dressing room now, and b when you were in dressing rooms in younger teams such as Arizona there?
Yeah, it for me, the lesson I really took all the time is I had to learn the hard way about professionalism, and I probably learned it more when I retired and understanding it truly near my last few years. And um, but being able, if you want to be light in the room and fun loving, you got to perform, and it's really becomes that, and you almost put a target on your back, but I think that's fine, and you got to be willing to understand that if you're going to act a certain way, it has to reflect in your game, and you can't just, mail it in terms of being a fun-loving personality and a clown, and but then you go on the ice and you're not game time decision, but you're not game ready, and you're not an absolute animal. And I think, I learned a lot of that from Joe Thornton. Joe Thornton was probably one of the most laid back, funny, fun-loving guys I ever played with, just an amazing human being. But once the puck dropped, he was a killer, and he was very hard on everybody around him, hard on himself. And I think people never really saw that side and wouldn't know it if you didn't really watch, but he was a dog. And I think, guys like that, captains like that I had, I really learned a lot from. And, lastly, I think in that, a big lesson I learned is how you treat people, how you treat the training staff, the equipment staff, how you treat all the people that make what we do so easy. And I say that in terms of, you forget as a player, and you maybe don't learn until you're older of what the trainers and the equipment staff actually mean to you, and how they're such an integral part of your career in terms of sharpening your skates and making sure that you're ready to go, and making sure that everything's ordered and your specs are to your liking, and seeing something that maybe is not working, and tweaking in your equipment, and also making sure you're healthy to get on the ice, making sure that you're getting the right things, the right kind of treatment, and sometimes telling you, "Hey, you're fine. Go out and play. Stop being a." And maybe I shouldn't have said that word, but it's all right. Authenticity. Don't be soft, and go out and play, and almost being kind of being a sounding board when things are going bad. And I think, I had so many great trainers in my career, and when you're young, you're kind of like, oh, why are they making me tip the trainers? And in your first year, you're like, geez, I'm not making any money, and this is crazy. But you don't realize how much work these guys put in on a day-to-day basis. Nobody will ever, that's not in the game, will know what the trainers do, and what they provide for us. And they deserve so much, tips, money, support, gifts from the players. And I think it's something that really is overlooked when you're younger. And once I just was kind of blessed to have some really good veterans that taught me that. Scott Gomez is another one. Was really great with everybody around him, all the way to the ushers, to people that are working and parking. People that you see every day that wave to you, that are really huge, enormous fans of the game, and fans of you, and you take it for granted. And we had a great parking attendant when I was in Arizona, and he passed away during COVID, and it was very sad because he was a guy that greeted us every single day. Armando, every day we showed up, he was smiling, was just the nicest human being. And then one day he wasn't there, and it's those are the people that make up, the organization as a whole, and what you're playing for, and the people you're playing for, just as much as you're playing for yourself and your family. I think that's a big takeaway I got from my career, and was taught to me from a lot of these veterans, in terms of how you handle yourself and carry yourself as an athlete and a professional.
Yeah, very well said. And I think I do a lot of like street interviews asking people what they think the hardest job in the game is. And for me, I think the answer 100 times out of 100 should be the trainers and equipment guys, and the amount of
Crazy.
hours that they put in. And like you said before, everybody plays a role. It takes an army to get the team out on the ice and make this entertainment business what it is. And those guys and girls are at the top of the list for me. Like the hours, like you said, it's astounding.
Jeez.
Astounding.
Yeah, people don't know you land, you fly. Let's say I fly from San Jose to, or we play a game, and I'm playing with the Sharks, and we're playing in Dallas, and we got to fly back, and we're playing LA the next night. The trainers are at the rink till 3 in the morning, taking dirty, sweaty equipment, hanging it up, making sure it's all in the right place for us, because we all are very particular with the drinks we want, the things we need. If there's gum in the stall, if our some guys like their sticks taped, because I never understood that, but some guys wanted their sticks taped. So all that has to be done before the next game, and then they have to go to sleep for 3, 4 hours, get up, come back to the rink 4 hours before us to get ready, get everything dialed in, make sure that the coaches have their whiteboard set up, they have everything they need. And because again, the coaches skate as well, and they'll be on the ice in practice. They got to make sure all that's dialed in, and they do it in a way, they have to make the room look homey and look like the home rink. So they also have to put everything up, put out all of our, our signage and all that up. And it's really incredible. It really is. You don't realize it when you're playing, but it's nuts. Like I always used to tell one or two guys that played, young guys, like, hey, one day in the season, you should, volunteer to go maybe early in the season and go when there's a day off the next day. Because obviously you don't want to do it on back to back, but go help the trainers unpack. Go with them in the room on their unpacking at 2 in the morning and see what that is and what that feels like. And it kind of makes you realize that your turnover, your mistake, maybe the coach playing you 16 minutes instead of 18 is actually in the grand scheme of things not that big of a deal when you're actually looking at how hard these people work and what they're doing to make sure that you're ready to go.
Yeah, no, I get it takes an army, and those guys are at the front of the lines to make it all happen.
Yeah.
Two more here for you, Jason. One, we're both Canadian boys living down in the U.S. right now. As much
Attaboy.
us to see the I'll say turnout of the Olympics and U.S. coming out on top. I think we both admit that that is good for the game of hockey growing and continuing to expand. Now that you're on the broadcast analysis side of the game, what else does the game of hockey need to do to continue expanding globally in the U.S., etc.?
Oh, I think it's doing a great job. And I think it's really staying the course and really leaning into the personalities of our game. Number one, it's selfishly, I'd love to see more guys, and I wish I did it when I played, but our culture of hockey is very much ingrained of guys don't think of themselves as a singular brand. You are the culture, you are your team. But I would tell any young guy that there's a possibility to be both. There's a possibility to grow your brand and that grows the game. And you see some guys doing it in the league and you can call it cringe and some guys don't like it. But, if you complain about something a couple times, I always, implore people to then try to do it a different way then. Try to do it authentically, try to show if you're a country boy and you like the simpler things and you don't realize that, once the game's over that you still gotta, life goes on. You can't just the money can't just be going out. You still have to be working. You have to find a purpose. And sometimes creating a brand for yourself can aid in that, and your family. And also it doesn't mean you're being selfish. So to me, it's really, really embracing and I think for the game to grow and I think hit the next level, I think teams need to really understand that individuality in hockey can be nurtured, and I think it should be for not only the star players but the role players. I think there needs to be an ability, and maybe guys haven't done it as much because we're kind of nervous and we're scared, and we want to be the team guy, and that's what makes our game so great and so incredible is that we're not we're not selfish and guys want to play for the team and they'll sacrifice themselves for the team and but I do think there's a line you can walk like anything in life, and I think you can grow your brand while still being a team player, and it's really just about finding your passion and showing fans that passion because they want to know more about you, and that can help in terms of supplementing income when you're done. So that's one for me on the player side of things. I wish guys would really embrace their brand more, and understand that. I wish I did. You see guys like Paul Bissonnette that did it. They were able to really embrace their brand, and he will even admit that he wasn't he was a hockey player and played in the NHL. And he was an NHL hockey player, but he wasn't the best NHL hockey player. But he found a way to find his purpose and path. And I think he probably had to fight against people pushing back on that. So I think that really nurturing that's important in the NHL for organizations and teams to really get guys going and push guys out and make sure that they understand that side of it that because that does bring in more fans. It
It
brings in
does.
more people. People love to see that side. There's a reason why, you know, soccer, football, basketball. There's a reason why basketball is so big and I think our product is 10 times better than basketball. And I can say that wholeheartedly. And if I saw a basketball player, I'd tell our game's way better than yours. I respect their game, respect what they do. It's almost impossible to be a NBA basketball player, let alone a high end one. But they are, and maybe it's because there's less players, but they're kind of preached at to be their own brand. And maybe we don't want our game getting to that because we hold that sacred as players and as organizations, that it's a family and a team. But I think you can get out and really do yourself a service by kind of expanding your horizons a little bit and putting yourself out there. And in turn, that will bring more fans in and that will grow the game and the community, because I know 99% of NHL players are great guys. And, it can't be 100% because there's always some bad apples everywhere. But, and I think it wouldn't be inauthentic to do that. And so for me, it's that. And then expansion is expansion. It has to happen. Do I love it? No, I don't. It I think I think too many teams waters down the game, but it is what it is. I understand that it's a business at the end of the day. It's a billion-dollar business, multi-billions, and we're not the ones running it. We're not the ones forking out the bill. It's the ownership. I think fans are the only reason. Fans are, you know, 90% the reason why the NHL and sports exist. And the other 9% is ownership. And then we're the 1%, not to, and I don't say that in a bad way. I think you can't have us without them and they can't have them without us. There's no owners without us. But the fans make up a big part of that. So I think that expanding, you're trying to bring in more fans, but I think our game's so good right now. But I think you can already see that I don't want to say there's a lack of players, but there's starting to become a big separation between the great teams and the bad teams. And I and it's not a knock on any player. I don't think that one bit. I don't think it's a knock on any single player that's in the league. I think every player that's in the league's earned the right to be there. They're NHL players. But I do think there's levels to the game. And I think that the more we keep going and the more the cap goes up, and if we start adding more teams as well, which I know we will, the money's going to go to the great players, and the great players are going to go to are going to want to win, because I think there's a shift now. We're kind of going that route of, the Olympics and that dreaded blasphemous group chat of Team USA is kind of thrown the league on its head when players have the power and they're using no movement clause to weaponize themselves to go to teams they want to go to and create these super teams. And if we get a lot of that, I think it's really going to hurt the rest of the teams in the league. And you can already see it on some teams that have been trying to get players and nobody wants to go there. So I do think that the more teams you add and franchises you add, the more you invite more players to go to the great organizations, because you can't guarantee that those organizations will be great. So, but there's established ones right now and we know who they are. And they're going to keep getting the best players.
I totally agree, and I think on the branding piece as well, like you said, it's the ultimate team sport. But I heard once, and I thought it was a great line, that people cheer for teams, but they associate and relate with players or other people, right? And people want to attach to people. They want to, they want to follow your career. They want to see which team you go to. It's not as much maybe about the people of the Sharks as it is, oh my God, I love this guy on the Sharks. And I think that's kind of the next evolution of the branding side of the game, like you said. But Jason, really appreciate the time here and all the insights and stories along the way. But the last one that I always ask to wrap things up here, in your particular shoes here, we'll look at the analyst and broadcasting side of things. If you could talk to a current player or student who hopes to end up on the broadcasting analyst side of things, what would be the biggest piece of career advice that you could give them, Jason?
Just be yourself. I think I'm still learning to do that at this point in my life and my career. And it's a work in progress. But it's very freeing and it's releasing that ego and just being yourself. And I know it seems cliche for people to say that, but it really is. It really shows through when guys are themselves on air and you see it. And you said it just before, fans want to attach to people and personalities. There's a reason they're wearing, 55-year-old men are wearing an 18-year-old's jersey and an 18-year-old's name on their back. They want to attach to people. They see you as, that they want to believe in that and believe in that you see them and you're speaking for them and speaking to them and not at them. So I think it's important for you, if you want to be a broadcaster, just to be yourself. And because fans can pick out the fake fairly quick. And
Definitely.
there's guys in the industry that fans can see it.
Yeah,
So
like you said, hockey fans are intelligent, or at least majority of hockey fans are intelligent. And
majority, there's no absolutes. I don't speak in absolutes. There's never to me there's some there's
there's
bad
always
apples and there's dum dums everywhere. Just like
there's
there's dum
always a
dums in
few.
broadcasting. I'm probably one of them.
There's always a few, but majority of this episode was phenomenal, Jason. I can't thank you
Attaboy, I
enough for
like
the
it.
time. And
No, that with me you could say 100% of it was great.
yeah, that's the only time it's fair. That's the only time it's fair. But no, man, I really appreciate it. And thank you to our listeners, our viewers, for tuning in to another episode of the Working in Hockey Show.